We got a Thursday matchup between the Niners and Rams. We're going to break this game down from a fantasy football standpoint. Try to identify some must starts, some sneaky starts, some guys to bench. But overall, macro analysis of what to expect from this game or what could happen in this game so you make some sound decisions for your fantasy football team. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're talking about these matchups every week, helping you set your lineups. We're going deep on the waiver wire every single day. We're looking at the trending players with the unique series to see whether or not you need those players. Click that subscribe button. Stop missing out. But first off, looking at this matchup between the Rams and the 49ers, we got a 48.5 over-under. In the last 3 games, we hit the over, and we already got a high over-under. We're not looking at the over-under to see whether or not we can hit this. We're looking at this to see what Vegas indicates, and they're indicating that we should see a lot of points scored. We should see both teams moving the football, and with that being said, that should indicate that there should be a good amount of yardage on the field and touchdowns scored. So that means players will have to score fantasy points while getting those yards and touchdowns. Common sense, right? And now you're looking at the last 3 matchups, 27-24, 21-20, 30-23. So we got some opportunities here in this matchup that could provide a good spark for fantasy football. We also see the players here that are most likely going to do that. And now we're looking at Brock Purdy and Matthew Stafford. I got the 4-for-4 rankings right down below me there. Take a good look at those. Keep that for the week. That way you have it for your quarterbacks that you are going to start. Brock Purdy, they got ranked at QB8 due to the matchup here, due to the flow of targets. That being said, they are valuing this matchup pretty good to have Brock Purdy up there. Brock Purdy, fringe QB1 territory here when it comes to the rankings, because honestly, when you look at like QB8 all the way down to like 13 or so, just a rough range. They're all about in the same area. That being said, pick your poison in that area, honestly. If you're saying start this guy versus that guy, usually with quarterbacks, if you're the QB15, you ain't too far off from the guy scoring QB10 range. That being said, just go off of what you want there. I think Matthew Stafford's a little bit low in the rankings. They're indicating that he's a sit unless you absolutely have to. That being said, I do like the matchup here. I do think the volume can be pushed, and I think Matthew Stafford can give you a little bit more than what he's ranked at, but you're getting 2 perspectives here. Looking at this, you got a high over-under. The ball's got to be pushed. I don't really see both quarterbacks being under 200 yards passing. Usually, most years, that's a rarity. This year, we're seeing that in a lot of games. I look for the game script to be pushed on both sides. I think Matthew Stafford, a little bit more riskier, but I think there's still some upside in this matchup. I think he's a little bit underranked, a little bit uncertain due to the Niners' defense. But still, when you're looking at this, there's volume in this game. There's volume to be had. That being said, if you have them and you're looking at them, you're probably thinking about it pretty good. On top of that, if you're this deep in the playoffs, you're probably rocking the guys in the top 5 or so, or you're streaming quarterbacks and you got a different option you're looking at. You're probably already looking at that pretty hard. We're looking at the running backs for the 49ers. This is where the head scratcher is. Isaac Guerendo. Looks like he's in. Sounds like he's confident. And there's a chance that his workload could be reduced or shared with Patrick Taylor. We mentioned this in Patrick Taylor, you need videos. It's more than you need the player. It's just the whole situation in general whenever we do those. We talked about that. We talked about Isaac Guerendo coming back, stealing all the workload, all the possibilities with that. And this one's kind of up in the air. And just gauging what the market is saying, other content creators are saying, like a volatile RB2 flex play option for Isaac Guerendo right now. And really just a gamble in general because you do not know how this team's going to respond with the injury. He might be good to go 100% and get all the workload, and it doesn't matter. He might get partial workload. Maybe it reduces by like 25%, and Patrick Taylor gets a little bit more. There's a chance for that. You're just going to have to risk it. That's just it. You're just going to have to risk it. Nobody here is going to tell you the right thing unless they accidentally do. And it's going to be an accidental thing. And if I told you to start him or to sit him, it would be a lie. So would you want me to lie to you and give you an answer? Or would you want me to tell you the truth? I can tell you the truth here that this matchup against the Rams is good. They bend to a lot of running backs, but they don't break often, the running backs. They broke twice this year. DeAndre Swift, Saquon Barkley almost broke the James Conner, and that's it. That's it. They do not break the running backs. So we need Isaac Guerendo to find a lane, bust through it with that 4.3 speed, and get a long gain. The odds are highly likely that the running back that's getting the touches in this matchup gets you 10 fantasy points or more, 10 to 13 range. And that being said, if Isaac Guerendo was healthy, good to go, getting a full workload, odds are 10 to 13 range anyways. Maybe that's what we're going to get out of him. Maybe. He's explosive. But maybe we get into this game, foot is acting up a little bit, we got to take him out, and it's Patrick Taylor. We do not know. Nobody knows. 49ers know a little bit more, and they knew that with Christian McCaffrey. They didn't tell us the truth on that. We're just going to have to see what's happening going in. We're just going to have to. The last 3 weeks, 30.1 PPR fantasy points to running backs on average. Most of that Saquon Barkley. Last 5, a little bit more than league average. On the season, they're about league average. And they don't shut down running backs to under 10 PPR fantasy points. They haven't yet. This could be the first game, but they have not yet. We should see a little something from these running backs. We should see a little something from these running backs at the bare minimum. Make your decision off of that. I can't guarantee you on either running back due to the volatility of this nature of workload. However, when we're looking at the Rams, they have not shut down a running back, a starting running back, to under 10 PPR fantasy points this year. We're getting good volume and a good push up front for these running backs. And we're just going to have to guess the workload going forward. But an okay matchup for the running backs coming in. We're looking at the wide receivers. Deebo has been cold. His last wide receiver 2 game was in week 10. Outside of that, 4 wide receiver 3 performances in a row. Just 2 wide receiver 1 weeks on the year. And a lot of people are going to start him and just pray to the fantasy gods. A lot of people might be looking another direction. When you're looking at what the Rams are doing to wide receivers, they're allowing a little something there. Jauan Jennings went off against them last time. They might go back to that well. He scored 46.5 PPR fantasy points. When you look at his scoring chart in the middle of his chest there at the barrel, that is that big game right there where he went off. He had 2 more recently. Jauan Jennings, not 100% safe any single week. 79 targets on the season, 774 yards, 6 touchdowns. Career year for him. He looks like he might be all right. And I think if you got him, you're looking at him. And usually your flex plays, you're putting him up in your roster spots. Looks like a lot of you, if you've had him, you've been relying on him, you've been using him, you're probably going to rely on him this week. Notice I didn't say you must start or must bench or anything like that. I like to look at the numbers. I like to talk through the players and just allow you to make your choices. I expect Ricky Pearsall, his snaps have been decreasing by the week. I expect him to surprise us somewhere down the line. Whether it's this week, last game of the season, somewhere. If I'm making a DFS lineup, I might have one in there out of 20 or so with him invested in, but he's going to be cheap, so he might be in more than what I'm thinking, so I can cram higher priced players. But if I'm making one of those lineups for this game, I would be thinking about him. Playoff time though, 12 team, 10 team, no. But looking at this, we got volatility at the wide receiver spot. You're not going to trust it, but you're going to have to roll with your gut. George Kittle. Look at his chart. It's beautiful. Tied in 1 week, every single week except for one, week 13 against the Buffalo Bills. We're going up against the Rams. The Rams allow 9.4 PPR fantasy points to tight ends over the last 3 weeks. They're bend but don't break. They broke the Kraft. They broke the McBride a little bit. They broke the Bowers. They broke the Henry. So from that standpoint, they're breaking or allowing fantasy points to tight ends who are getting volume in the offense or stud tight ends. We got a stud tight end right here who gets volume in the offense. Played 11 games, 67 targets. And if we played in all the games, we'd be pushing 1,000 yards. 11.9 yards per target. We got an 8.2 ADOT, which is pretty good for a tight end. Deeper downfield compared to a lot of tight ends and a 22% target share. Volume. And I don't think anybody's benching George Kittle. If anyone's benching George Kittle, let us know why in the comments so we can react to that with our plays or tail it or whatever somebody wants to do. But if you're benching George Kittle for somebody, let us know what your situation looks like. Now we're looking at the Rams. Kyren Williams is the man getting the touches and the workload. I can't guarantee you he'll get you an RB1 week every week. I can guarantee you he'll get a lot of volume. He'll get a lot of work. And it's going to be good enough most games. Good enough most games. He's only got one low game on the season. Week 11 against the Patriots. Outside of that, 10 or more PPR fantasy points. He's okay. Safe against the Niners. Week 3 against the Niners, 31.6 PPR fantasy points. And on top of that, last year he had some of his better games against the Niners. He just gets volume against them. And eventually he just cracks, gets the touchdown. 12 touchdowns on the season, 1,000 yards. We're getting it done. We're getting volume. And the Niners, last 3 weeks, 25.2% above league average when it comes to allowing fantasy points to running backs. And that's with DeAndre Swift with 5 fantasy points in there. But James Cook, 19. Josh Jacobs, 28. Kenneth Walker, 13.9. Rachaad White, 19. Zeke got 10.8 against them. 22.3 with Kareem Hunt. They will bend a little bit, and they'll break sometimes too. That is the thing about the 49ers defense. I think a lot of people look at the 49ers defense and then fantasy football and they get scared automatically with their players. But honestly, they're bending. They're not breaking, but they will also break a few times. They broke a fair amount of times, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times and almost a few more times with some 19 spots in there. That's a good amount of breakage from this defense. But their league average when it comes to allowing fantasy points to running backs, they're pretty steady. Expect him at least get you 12 to 15, and he could break it loose if he hits the red zone. But we are looking at Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Both these wide receivers, if you got them, more than likely you're starting them. I mean, Cooper Kupp, almost a 30% target share. Puka Nacua, do I really need to say more? And then the 49ers. Around league average, a little bit less when it comes to allowing fantasy points to wide receivers. They're not exactly shutting down teams. They're allowing a little bit something. They're just not breaking too much. CeeDee Lamb went off against them. Jackson Smith-Njigba had an okay game. Rome Odunze did. Lazard did. Justin Jefferson did. Just, they're in some weird game scripts due to the pace of their offense, due to sometimes they can hold off the run, sometimes not so well, and they just get in weird game scripts. On top of that, they can be solid against the pass. However, when we're looking at these two wide receivers that are getting targets, they're getting opportunity, I want to know if any of you guys are even benching these guys. Are you benching these guys? Someone let us know in the comments below. I do not see many fantasy gamers benching Puka Nacua, and I don't see many fantasy gamers benching Cooper Kupp. I just do not see that. Cooper Kupp has 91 targets on the season and has played in 9 games. I am reading that off to you right now. Has anybody even noticed that? 91 targets in 9 games? That is very consistent. 75 targets in 8 games for Puka Nacua. Demarcus Robinson, if something breaks free, if the coverage busts, he gets a target downfield, that could potentially happen for him. When it comes to Colby Parkinson, I don't even think he's really rostered in many leagues. Maybe as a cheap daily fantasy football add-on for your roster. But the matchup's okay for tight ends. It's just the volume's going to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. It's really hard to rely on the tight end in this offense. Might get some workload, might not. That being said, when you're looking at this, you're probably starting other options. Not saying he's going to hit or not. You're probably looking at other options. It's just how it is, how the cookie's crumbling at the tight end spot. And on top of that, you made it this deep into the fantasy playoffs. You probably already got a dude. You probably got like George Kittle or something. When looking at the 49ers defense, they're really not breaking the tight ends. They've given up a little bit to McBride, a little bit to Fant, a little bit to Gray, and a little bit to Kraft. That being said, they're not breaking the tight ends. So don't expect the tight end to break against them when all the balls are going to the wide receiver spot. Unless they got to get creative around the red zone. That could happen to Parkinson. But again, I do not expect them to have a high ownership rate in fantasy football. But honestly, it's a drop your balls on the table, see what happens type of play if you're doing it. But I don't see many people wanting to do that. That's the matchup for the day. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.